Welcome to lecture number 9. This is topic 1.9, West Central Africa, the Kingdom of Kongo. The first of 3 learning objectives says to explain how the adoption of Christianity affected the economic and religious aspects of the Kingdom of Kongo. To start, the Kingdom of Kongo came into contact with Portugal in 1483 after Diogo Sau arrived there. The kings at the time, King Zinga Nkubu and his son Nzinga Mbemba, later known as Afonso I, voluntarily converted to Christianity after contact with the Portuguese. Several coincidences led them to adopt this religion. In the Kingdom of Kongo's traditional religion, the use of the cross was already common, so seeing an outside group using the same religious symbolism made them think that it was a sign to convert. Additionally, albinos were considered to be spirits that could traverse spiritual barriers, and the Europeans' lighter skin made them seem to have similar spiritual capacities. Thus, the arrival of these foreigners with similar iconography and spiritual attributes was seen as a providential sign for conversion. The impact of this conversion was significant, creating a strong relationship between the Kingdom of Kongo and Portugal. This relationship was mutually beneficial, increasing Kongo's wealth through trade. They traded ivory, which was intricately carved as shown in the image of an elephant horn with a tiny carving. Other goods included salt, copper, and textiles. From the Portuguese, they imported finished goods from Asia, weapons, and more textiles. The adoption of Christianity also introduced new art forms, including religious icons and church architecture influenced by the European styles. Nzinga Mbemba sent Congolese youth to Europe to study religions and bring back more Christian iconography, and he later adopted the Portuguese language. He had such a strong command of Portuguese that he corresponded with King João II of Portugal and was known to be very studious in reading the Bible and thinking about religious matters. Catholicism gained a strong foothold in Congo because of the nobility's voluntary conversion, leading to a mass acceptance across the kingdom. One reason for this was Afonso I sending the sons of Congo elites to Portugal to study religion in Portuguese. Afonso sent his own son, who later became a bishop of the Catholic Church. The presence of the church was not tied to foreign colonial occupation. Through their early relationship with Portugal, Congo maintained a large amount of sovereignty and agency in their interactions. Portugal and Congo operated as peers in this trading relationship. The integration of Christianity also led to the establishment of schools and seminaries in Congo, promoting literacy and education among the elite. The form of Catholicism in Congo was distinct from that in Europe due to its syncretism, incorporating elements of traditional Congo beliefs and practices. Christian festivals were combined with local traditions, creating unique religious celebrations. The second learning objective is to explain how the Kingdom of Kongo's political relations with Portugal affected the kingdom's participation in the transatlantic slave trade. One significant change with the adoption of Christianity was the adoption of primogeniture succession traditions, where the king's eldest son would take the crown after the king's death. Previously, the king was elected by royals or nobles. This new system led to succession wars, the first of which was between Afonso I and his brothers. Afonso I won his war of succession, he claimed, through divine intervention, when he invoked the saint Santiago in his decisive battle. Portugal was interested in the trade of enslaved people, and to gain access to captives, they funded and aided the reigning king in exchange for more captives. The Portuguese provided military support, including firearms, which helped Congo expand its territory and capture more slaves. Enslaved people from Congo were first sent to the Americas to extract gold and silver from Spanish mines, and later to Brazil to work on sugar plantations. The illustration on the screen is the Brazilian settlement at Recife in Pernambuco, where enslaved people were first taken by the Portuguese. Congo's participation in the slave trade brought wealth but also social disruption and internal conflict. Eventually, a dependency was created between Congo and Portugal. Congo nobles preferred to limit their participation to selling war captives, but as demand from European powers grew, they began enslaving almost anyone available. Initially, only prisoners of war and no women were traded, but by 1560, the Portuguese would only accept human captives as currency. War with surrounding villages and ongoing civil wars created more havoc and dependency on Portuguese weapons. By the mid-17th century, King Garcia II nearly expelled the Portuguese with the Dutch alliance, as the Dutch were gaining influence in the world trade and had unseated Portugal from their sugar plantations in Brazil. The Dutch provided military aid and ships to transport slaves, temporarily shifting the balance of power in the region. Despite efforts to reduce dependency, Congo remained heavily involved in the slave trade, contributing to its eventual decline. Congo became the largest source of enslaved people in history of the transatlantic slave trade. Out of the 13 million people transported, 5.6 million embarked from the Central African coast. This is significant because many people in the Americas can trace their heritage back to the Central African coast. The cultural impact of Congo is evident in the Americas through practices such as the ring shout, a dance and religious ritual among African Americans. Additionally, the influence of Congo's religious practices can be seen in the syncretic religions of the Caribbean, such as Palo and Cuba. The last learning objective is to explain how the Kingdom of Kongo's Christian culture influenced early generations of African Americans. A quarter of the enslaved people directly transported to what later became the United States came from West Central Africa. Enslaved individuals were imported based on their crop expertise. As sugar cane became the most lucrative crop in the Americas, those with experience growing it in Brazil and Portuguese islands were sent to North American colonies. Many West Central Africans were Christians before arriving in the Americas and continued practicing that same religion. An example is the slave churches in Brazil, such as the one in Bahia, where black enslaved workers and white Europeans worshiped side by side. These churches became centers of social and cultural life, helping to preserve African traditions. Lastly, a remnant of Kongo tradition seen in the Americas is the practice of naming children after saints according to the day of the week on which they were born. In the Catholic tradition, every saint is ascribed a specific day in the calendar year, and children are named after the saint of the birthday. This practice remained common even after the transatlantic slave trade, and Christian names among early African Americans, whether in Iberian or English versions, often had African origins. This exemplifies how ideas and practices around kinship and lineage endured across the Atlantic. Additionally, the influence of Congo's legal and governance structures can be seen in some African American communities' organizational practices. African American spirituals and gospel music were also influenced by the religious song and traditions brought by Kongo. In recap, Kongo adopted Christianity in 1491, creating a blended form of African Catholicism. The conversion strengthened ties with Portugal. Later, trade between Portugal and Kongo focused on the exchange of human captives, with Portugal demanding greater access to the slave trade in exchange for continued military assistance in Congo's civil wars. West Central Africa became the largest source of enslaved people in the transatlantic slave trade, meaning that a quarter of enslaved Africans in North America came from this region. West Central Africans continued their Christian practices even after arriving in the Americas, influencing the religious and cultural landscape. Finally, the legacy of Kongo's Christian culture and participation in the slave trade continues to shape African Americans' heritage and history. The resilience and adaptability of Kongo's cultural practices demonstrate the enduring influence of African traditions in the diaspora. Thank you for watching. If you would like to watch the next lecture, click the thumbnail on the screen. And if you would like more resources to help you study, you can visit apushslides.com/afam. I wish you the best of luck with your studies, and I hope to see you back on the next lecture.